Welcome to the Wealth Matters podcast, where investors come together to better understand how to build passive cash flow and create generational wealth without all the confusing mumbo-jumbo. Here's your host and co-author of Amazon #1 bestseller, Alpesh Pamar.
Welcome to Wealth Matters podcast. I am going to talk to someone who is from the same state and same town as I belong to, Ketan Patel. Ketan is a high performance coach who helps motivated real estate entrepreneurs create more income and impact by aligning their thoughts, emotions, and actions. And I can see he's in the background. If you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, I see Jim Rohn's photo, and I believe in Jim Rohn. He was amazing. I still love his book. So welcome, Ketan.
Alpesh, thank you so much for having me on the show. And it's just so exciting that we grew up in the same part of the world, right?
Yeah, it was funny, right? I'm like, I know this last name. Let me talk to him. We could even do this interview in Gujarati.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, tell us something interesting or funny about yourself.
Well, interesting thing is I spend a lot of time and energy in self-development, 3-hour meditations a day sometimes. And I love to do a lot of different things, right? From neuro meditation to real estate, raising to coaching. I like to be involved in a different kind of things and
That's
travel,
crazy.
of course.
Wow, 3 hours meditation. I mean, I try to meditate almost every day, but 5 minutes and I suck at it. so I do need to get better at it. So when and how did you start investing in real estate?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I used to be a pharmacist actually, full-time pharmacist, and one day I realized I don't want to rely on my corporate job, right? I need options. I need to create some passive income. And I found that real estate was the perfect avenue because you could decide how much you want to get involved. You could invest passively. Maybe you could buy a small property yourself. You could find a partner. The flexibility really attracted me. And I always enjoyed numbers and investment area and things like that. So I decided to pursue that path.
That's an interesting point. Means we talk about real estate all the time, and we mention about tax benefits, depreciation, appreciation. Leveraging other people's money, being also the lender, right? But no one talks about the flexibility, and that's a
Yeah.
great point because you said you could be just passive, right? Like people invest with you and I when we are raising capital, or you can be semi-active, right? You could be very
Right.
active, flip it, wholesale it as well, and make it your primary business, or you can just partner with people who do all the
Yes.
work and you just bring the money, right? Or you can just buy a single family and hire a property manager and be semi-active. So that's a great point because you could do that on side and still grow your real estate portfolio.
100%. And the beauty of that is as your life circumstances change, your family circumstances change, your passions and interests change, you could take all that into account and do what you need to do. So maybe 2 years you're passive and now you're like, you know what? I like this a lot. I want to give it a go for another year and be active. And then you could go back and forth and I think it's a huge value there, which is not possible in a lot of the other businesses, so to speak, right? So
That is true. And the other thing I think I want to remind listeners that even as an active investor, I also invest passively in other deals. And I'm pretty sure you do too, right? So as you said, you
yeah,
can go
yeah,
back and forth because
yeah.
sometimes I do want to take care of that passive loss I'm getting by getting some passive income, steady income, right? So I would invest in another deal, even though I'm active in a lot of other real estate syndications.
Yeah.
So when was your first investment in real estate and what was it?
Yeah, so my first investment, it was like $106,000 single family home. I only needed $25,000. This was back in 2012, 13. And the interesting thing is I didn't have $25,000. So I
Right.
convinced two of my pharmacist friends to go with me. So they each invested 8,000, little over 8,000 each. So now my challenge
Ah,
became from 25 to come up with 8, which I didn't have
eight.
either. So then I opened up a 401k. My employer was doing a match and I took that money as a loan. And that's
Oh
how
my
my
God.
journey started.
Wow, wow. So you figured it out. That's crazy because when I talk to some of my friends and investors and they're like, "Oh, we don't have money." And I'm like, "You should figure it out, right?" So 401k loan. That's pretty interesting. And how did that investment work out for you?
So in the beginning, it was challenging. We had big troubles with tenants and whatnot, but eventually, was cash flowing very well, and we sold it at a good price. But what I realized, something important with that investment is, too many times we invest in the first investment and we are concerned about the return. And I tell my investors all the time, even if you make 500% return on the first investment or you make 10%, it's irrelevant in a way, because once you make that, now your mind is going to see this as a possibility. Now you're going to read about real estate, you're going to research,
Yeah,
you're going to talk to people, and your world is going to open up. So that first investment is very, very crucial in that aspect.
that's a great point again. And I lost all the penny I had invested in my very first investment. And I still continued because I knew how real estate works. I'm like, everyone makes mistakes, right? As long you learn from those mistakes and move on, it's okay. So that's another point, a thing I tell my investors as well as friends. Don't think about that the first investment has to be a blockbuster, right? They take 3, 4 years to pull the trigger because they want to find the best deal, the perfect deal, which does not exist, right? They think, oh,
Yeah.
everyone made, one of my friend made 100% return. I got to do the same. And I'm like, once you take the step, and as you said, the things you learn from it's more important than just the return.
Yep.
Let's talk about, because I have heard you on LinkedIn, right? The videos, and thank you for sharing the videos. And you always talk about unlocking true potential. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, what I'm trying to communicate is that all of us have so much more potential, right? We could be doing so much more in our own ways. For someone, it's just having a thriving business. For someone else, it's just having more time so they could spend with their family. If somebody else, they just want to see what other skills they could acquire. But too many times, we have these limiting beliefs and fears that we are not aware of, and they really tap our potential. So we have this job or we have this business, we are okay, we are not doing bad, but at the same time we are not inspired, we are not passionate, we are not feeling so alive and joyful, which is possible for all of us. That is what I mean by untapping your potential and going to that next level.
Thank you for defining it for me. So, how did you do that for yourself? What did you go through to unlock your true potential?
Yeah, so I was always fascinated by this subject, right? So initially, when I got into real estate, I thought I was trying to be better at real estate. So I started going to some conferences.
Yeah.
I ended up hiring a coach that was trained directly by Tony Robbins.
Oh,
And he
wow.
threw
Okay.
me into the deep end, and I didn't knew much about Tony Robbins. And then went to Tony's event. I did Tony's coaching program. I went with Wim Hof. They call him the Iceman.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Wim Hof is what I follow.
yeah,
I take
so
cold shower bath. Wim Hof method, I tell people every time. So
it's
that's my routine
amazing.
every morning. Yeah.
It's just amazing work he does. And I climbed the mountain with him and I realized that
You
20 fair.
did.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I met him in San Jose when he did the event a couple of years ago, Wim Hof, and I was just mesmerized. But if you did a mountain, man, I got to do that.
It's absolutely recommend, right? Because what happens is you realize that it's 20 Fahrenheit. How are you doing this thing? You really start questioning your life. You start questioning, what are you really believing into, right? Maybe you're not happy with your job, or you're not happy with how much money you're making or how much impact. Rather than accepting those things, you start challenging that. So whether it's Wim Hof, Tony Robbins, I was just at a meditation retreat where you meditate 10 hours a day just, 3 weeks ago with Dr. Joe Dispenza. So
Oh, really?
every
That's
area,
amazing,
yeah.
man. You have been with a lot of, yeah, I respect Joe Dispenza, man. His books are awesome.
Yeah, so all these things I've done, hiring my own coaches, exploring my own emotions, my thoughts, my patterns, to figure out, what my purpose is, right? What am I trying to achieve? How do I feel fulfilled and successful and all that? That is how I'm unlocking my potential. And one day I realized I love this, I'm very passionate about this, and I started teaching it to people.
That is very interesting. So you literally took action. You went Tony Robbins to Wim Hof to Joe Dispenza. A lot of people, they just like to stay in the same shell, right? They're like, okay, my life is miserable, or this is what I'm comfortable with. I'm not gonna step out, right? That is what kind of limiting beliefs most of the investors have, because you deal with a lot of investors, active investors to passive investors. What have you seen?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So depending on if they're active or passive, there are so many limiting beliefs, right? But let's talk about passive investors. They don't want to buy their own property. They just want to partner with someone and invest. Typically, a big limiting belief or fear is about losing all the money. So if they've never done the investment, they just feel like, what if this doesn't work and I lose all the money? Well, some investments don't work, right? But it doesn't mean a lot of investments you're going to lose money. Or the limiting belief is, hey, I just don't have the time to study or get myself educated. And in reality, you don't need that much time. Even if you take 1 hour a week to read about real estate, in 2, 3, 4, 5 months, which are going to fly by, you'll be so much more knowledgeable. So the limiting belief being, hey, I'm in tech, or I'm in this and I don't have that much time, I don't know about this investment, whatnot. It could be different but those are some common themes.
And how do you help them in overcoming those beliefs?
Yeah, so typically I work a lot with active investors and business owners and entrepreneurs, right? But sometimes with passive, but typically active. So the number one thing is, half of the battle is finding out what that limiting belief is, because it's like an iceberg that's under the
Yeah.
ocean below the surface. We don't see it, because if we could see it, we could do something about it, right? So the first step for anyone that's listening is to really figure out, what are those things that I'm believing, right? Limited story. For example, well, I didn't had a good childhood, or I didn't went to good college, I'm not that smart, or maybe I'm not that smart as my friend that's doing this. It could be whatever for you. So figure that out. Or I'm too old now to do real estate, or I'm too young to do it, or I don't have the network, I don't have the money. It just goes on and on. So figure out, first of all, what that limiting belief is. A part two would be really questioning. Okay, if take an example. If I'm young and I think, I can't build a multi-million dollar real estate portfolio, is there somebody else that's young and that has done too? The answer is yes, right?
Yes.
People have done it. Is there someone that studied healthcare and became successful in real estate? Yes. So you start questioning these beliefs and you start asking yourself, why am I believing this? If it's not supporting me, if it's not making me excited, if it's not helping me go towards my goal, why do I even believe it? So that questioning piece will start to slowly, kind of pull the thread, so to speak.
That is very interesting. How do you work with this, let's say a business owner, right? Where do you start, and how do you figure out what the end goal would be?
Yeah, so you want to know the 5 pillars when it comes to high performance, whether it's any real estate business or anything like that,
Yeah.
right? So here's where it starts. Number one is clarity. We need to be clear on the outcomes we are trying to achieve, the goals we are trying to achieve, and also know why we want that, the purpose behind it,
That
what we are trying to feel, what we are trying to accomplish, right?
That is a
So,
great point, right? So Simon Sinek's book, Why, Start
yeah,
with Why. Why
yeah,
is so important. You
yes.
can't be asking for a lot of money. You can't be asking for great health. You got to know why you want those, right?
100%. 100%. So when you know the purpose, and it's okay, go as big as you want on your goals, but when you know why, you have more clarity. And now you could develop a strategy to get there. So, right? So now there are so
Yeah.
many ways to get there. You could take road A, road B, road C. So you figure out what is a strategy that is good for you, because we all have different skills, we have different passions, we have different goals. So why would we choose a strategy that work for someone else, right? We need to
Right.
craft our own strategy to get there. So for example, for me, it's raising capital because I enjoy that piece more. I enjoy coaching. I also had a senior care business that I put on
You did.
autopilot, but eventually I realized that I've outgrown that strategy. So we outgrow things as well. We have to move as we grow. So that's
Yes.
the second pillar. pillar.
That's great. So you had another business and you outgrew. So you got to have that also in place, the strategy that if you outgrow this particular investment or
Yeah.
goal, then where would you want to go?
Yes, exactly. So now we have strategy. So now we know what we want and how we want to get to strategy. Now it's time for pillar number 3, which is execution, which is taking consistent action, having a plan where you take action. And you know what? You measure. If you don't get results, you change the action, but you keep taking it till it works. And you get better at managing your time. You get better at managing your productivity, doing the right things instead of just having a to-do list and going all over the place, right? Now you're getting some results. We move on to pillar number 4, which is leverage. How do we leverage your time? How do we leverage your skill, your connection, the money you're making? How do you reinvest to improve the quality of your business, quality of your life, free up that time? And then after that, the 5th piece is the mindset, the limiting beliefs and fear. As we are doing all these things, naturally we are going to get some roadblocks. So we could
Right.
address this is the framework that I've created. This is the framework that I use with folks. And I find that pretty much everyone's challenges fall into one of this category or more. Then we just have a game plan to take care of those challenges.
No, this is awesome. Thank you for sharing those 5 pillars. I totally was mesmerized and I started thinking, that's why I stopped myself. I started thinking how I want to go from the one step to another step, right? Like, oh, I got to have strategy in place. I got to have clarity. So no, this was awesome. Thank you so much. Let's take a quick break. And after the break, we'll go through the same questions I ask every guest.
You're listening to the Wealth Matters Podcast. The Wealth Matters Podcast. For more info about what we do, check us out at wealthmatters.com. It's wealth, WEALTH, matters, MATRS.com.
Welcome back to Wealth Matters Podcast. I have been enjoying discussing about limiting beliefs and how to unlock your true potential with Ketan Patel. Ketan, are you ready for fire round?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's go. Would you be changing any business or investment strategy after this pandemic is over?
Possibly just looking at the markets and the numbers. And I think it's always important to stay tuned to what's happening around you and then using that data to guide your strategy and future business moves.
It's great. Favorite real estate or finance or even personal development book?
Best one would be One Thing by Gary Keller.
Oh, yes. It's a great book. I got to reread it actually. It's time. So I connected to I don't know if you remember that book, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, I think. So it's
Yes.
like extension of Eat That Frog, right? It was a small book and then the One Thing is like much expanded version, but it's a great book. Any tool or website you recommend or you cannot live without?
Evernote.
Evernote, yeah, it's great. Can't complain. Any advice for beginner investors?
I would tell them that just see the first 1 or 2 investments. It's never about the investment. Once you do this, you never know what would happen in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Your whole destiny could be completely different. So don't look at the first investment as, hey, I have to do all this work to get through it and learn and understand. Know that it's going to give you so much value as you grow. And also it's going to make you a different person, like Jim Rohn talks about. There's so much value in becoming someone that has done that investment, right, above the numbers and the returns and all that stuff. So
That's great. How do you give back?
yeah, so I work on putting this water filtration systems back in India for kids in certain areas and things like that, so they have clean water, and just working on getting their computers and books and things like that there. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we should talk about it for sure. So, and
yeah.
how can my listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, so they could go to my website, Ketan Patel. That's Ketan Patel, Patel.com. I do have my YouTube channel there, 5 Pillars of Peak Performance Guide. And for listeners who really want to take their game to the next level, whether it's their business or life, they could hit take action and fill the form. And I'll be happy to do a complimentary discovery session with them.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ketan, for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. This was awesome to chat with you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Wealth Matters podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes so others can enjoy the show too. Have a great week and happy investing!